my gosh.
Hello, everybody. Oh, and now it's all about me. Sorry, table shifted.
Oh my gosh, I think I just didn't pull it out far enough. Hello!
Hello. And welcome back, everybody. I was about to say good morning. That's not accurate. Welcome back to Clearly Two Silly People.
Yes.
Here to talk about socks again
Very
for
silly.
week 3 of the Fabrications Sock Knit Along.
Mm-hmm.
We hope you guys have been doing okay. Drop comments below. Let us know how the last week went.
Yeah.
What did we talk about last week?
Last week we talked about 2 at a time socks.
Oh, on a magic loop.
On a magic loop. We talked about short row heels. We talked about the heel flap and turn.
Yep, that was me.
Short rows on shorties, 2 at a time
Yeah.
with DPNs.
Yeah,
That kind of stuff.
all things heels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which went, I think, fairly smoothly. Maybe you
Yeah.
guys were just like being exceptionally nice, but there weren't a ton of questions. So if you have run into questions in your attempt to follow along with any of the heels, pop questions
Yeah.
in the chat below.
Yeah, I wonder how people are doing, like if people are working, what kind of pace they're working at, if they're trying to keep up,
Yes.
or if they're just kind of
Yeah.
watching each week and then,
Which is
gonna kind of take their time getting started.
Yeah.
Like,
it's what I did
Yeah.
for one of the sew-alongs. I am currently rewatching one of the old sew-alongs to catch up about a year later. Yeah, and I'm also wondering if people are trying to do them 2 at a time, either the sane method or the messy method, DPNs. This week, we don't have a ton to talk about.
no, it's gonna be a short week because it's kind of, well, for my end of it, the toe up sock, you're just knitting the leg. So there's a couple of little things we can chat about. And then you're doing your top down.
Yeah, so last week we did the heel flap, and now we're doing this fussy bit. So picking up along here, and then all you do is you do some decreases and then you knit your foot. So
Okay.
there's just going to be a lot of knitting homework.
Yeah. Yeah.
No pressure. Much pressure. No pressure. Yeah. Okay. So let's dive in. Talk about the leg, Caitlin.
Yeah. So so basically you're just gonna be knitting in the round for quite a while.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So when you finish your short row heel, you
Yep.
end up back with the right number of stitches, right?
Yes, you do.
And then you just
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. There's
been a
not like with the heel flap and gusset. There's kind of three parts?
Yeah,
to
heel-
the heel.
yeah, heel
Right?
flap, turn the heel, and then the
The
gusset.
decreases. Okay. And so for short row heels, you're kind of like building the bottom of the heel and then you're building the top of the heel. So it's just like half and half kind of thing. And then I like to knit my socks until they are the same length as my foot.
Right.
And then I start to do my ribbing. But there are some things that you can do if you want to change up any of the sizing. So if you have like wider calves, or I guess even narrower calves,
Yeah,
like
it's true. Yep.
depends on how you want to fit your sock.
Yeah, if you want like a really negative ease or something. Or
Yeah.
or if there's a large gradient between ankle and calf.
Exactly. Yeah. Most socks are kind of drafted to have like a, not that the leg is an even size, but it kind of, the way that you have a bit of negative ease, it kind of evens out
Yeah.
in between the ankle and the calf. Like,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
you want
You'll
it to
have a little
be-
bit of positive and then you'll have a little bit of negative and you'll have
Exactly.
the flexibility to move your ankle joint.
Yeah. And that way the tighter part of the sock is around your calf so that it holds your sock up. So there are a couple of patterns that have calf increases built into the pattern, and one of them is called Warm Feet for Every Body. And that is a toe up sock with a heel flap and gusset. So it's kind of a combination of the two. And the calf increases, it's a free pattern, And the calf increases are pretty straightforward. So I think they have you do two increases on one round,
Okay.
and then knit 5 rows
Okay.
or 5 rounds, and then another increase, and then you just do that a few times until your calf is the width that you want. So it's a
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
very simple, nothing fancy.
And if you're doing it toe up,
Yeah,
especially if you're doing it on a magic loop, you can try them on as you go.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
if you have a steeper gradient, you could put in more increased rows. Or if it's a bit shallower, but you want to do like a full knee high,
Yeah.
you could put more plain rows in between each increase.
Yeah. And you want to, so you want to keep in mind that most people want to have some negative ease to their socks, because otherwise they will slouch and slide down your leg.
Yes.
They won't stay on, like especially if you're wearing boots or something.
Yeah, the ribbing at the top will do some, but it can only do so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So take care not to do too many increases without trying it on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or you might just have slouchy socks, which is a total look.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, I have also been captivated by the slouchy sock and I want to say Birkenstock clog look
Yeah.
on Instagram.
Yeah.
Very cozy.
It's very cozy for sure. But usually they recommend about 10, I think it's 10% negative ease.
It could be.
I think it's
don't know.
10%. No, I think it's 10%.
Yes.
So if you wanted to get mathy with it, you could measure your gauge on your sock.
Oh yeah.
The
gauge, right? Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Look at me talking about gauge like I know
Wow.
what I'm talking about.
I'm pretty sure we said we don't. Oh, I don't think we talked about gauge at all.
No, but when I first started knitting socks,
Uh-huh.
I did have this conversation a lot because remember I was saying
Oh, yeah.
I have such sensory things with socks and things like that. I really didn't want to have a sock that was falling off. I didn't want to have a sock that was too tight. So I worked out how many stitches for cast on and how many stitches wide I wanted my socks to be. Basically, you measure the width, the circumference of your foot, and you compare it with your gauge, and you figure out how many stitches per inch, and then you work out what that number is minus 10%.
Ah, okay.
Okay, does that make sense? Did I explain that
I
well
think
enough?
so. So if you compared your gauge and you
Yeah.
came up with 66 stitches. Oh, no, 60 stitches. Let's make ourselves easy. Minus 10% means you would cast on 54.
Right. So, going with that math, see, I'm not really a math guy, but going with that math, you could measure your calf. If you think you need a calf adjustment or you would be comfortable having one, you could measure the circumference of your calf at the widest point, and then do that same math to figure out maybe how many stitches you want to increase to.
Yeah, so if you figure out you need like to go up to 80 stitches
Yeah.
and you want it to be like a 6-inch leg, then you divide 6 inches
Yeah.
of rows
Yeah.
by the 20 stitches.
So you'd want to do your increases. She spaced them out sort of every 5 rows so that it's not like a steep increase. It's
Yes.
sort of a gradual increase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, math.
So-
That's good. And remember, I think I mentioned this one of the earlier sessions, that like every sock you knit is practice for the next one,
Yeah.
and refining your preferences for construction and wearing of socks.
Mm-hmm.
So if you make this pair and you're like, oh, they're too slouchy, well then we know that's for next time.
Yeah. Either go down a needle size or cast on more stitches. That's something that
fewer stitches if it's too slouchy.
cast on, yes, fewer stitches. Thank you. Yeah, so there's all kinds of things you can do.
And one of the lovely things about knitting is it is fully customizable. So feel free to lean into that. I know some people feel weird about having to make adjustments, but that's the whole joy of making your own clothing, is that you can adjust it to fit you. Beauty.
Love it.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, it was just knitting the leg, and yeah, you just kind of, you know, I would compare it to a sock that you like the height of, and if you can try your sock on, try it on, and then knit to that length.
Yeah. I would say as we're heading into summer, socks can be a great summer knit, and if you've got a cotton or cotton blend sock yarn that has some nylon in it, they make for great ankle socks. I will flag, corporate speak again, you probably want about an inch of fabric before you start your ribbing for the short row heel. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And maybe not quite as much for the heel flap, but kind of, yeah, before you start the rib.
Also, figure out how, like I already said, figure out how long you want your sock, and I would factor in about 1.5 to 2 inches for your cuff, because if your cuff is not long enough, it's not gonna have it's not gonna be as strong to hold your sock up. I find those the ones I have that are like that, they kind of stretch out and just kind of
Slouch.
Yes.
That would explain the graveyard of hats that I knit when I was first learning and hated purling and ribbing. And so I was like, an inch of ribbing is fine. It was not fine. These hats can just like slide all the way down. Yeah. All right.
So I think that's it for my end.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can I wax poetic about I forgot what I was going to wax poetic about.
I would love
the
you
gusset.
to, yeah. Wax poetic about whatever you want.
The gusset. Okay. So we're going to talk about the gusset. We're going to do a quick little zoom in a second. Oh gosh, it was so hard this week to not keep knitting on these socks because I was like in the zone.
Oh, yeah.
No, I need 2 examples. I need one for one section and one for the follow-up. So I do have the heel flap and turn from my sock from last week.
Yeah.
So there's my heel flap, and then you can see my little turn makes a little pocket for my heel. And as you can see right here, we've got a whole bunch of weirdness going on. We've got some needles, we've got some exposed fabric with no needles. How in the heck do we turn it in a tube that goes this way? That is where the gusset comes in. So we have this piece. So I'm going to demonstrate how we transform this into this, wherein we have needles around all sides to make this tube. And then using this piece, I'm going to show you where you're going to decrease to shape your gusset, a la my finished sock. Right here, we've got a line of decreases on both sides to reduce a honking great number of stitches back down to the 60 that I started with.
Yeah. All right. I will set it up.
Yes, I will. Look pretty. I'm just looking for a light switch for the overhead light. I will look extra pretty.
Yeah.
All right. To put that on my resume. What do you do for a living? Sometimes I stare at a camera and look pretty. Okay, let's get knitting.
Okay.
Yes, right.
Still need to put this down in the right place.
Here we go. Up it this way a little bit. Yeah, let's see how that looks. Good. I think that'll be great. Okay. So let's start with a close-up look at the heel flap. Make sure these are separated. Okay, so I did my heel flap in a contrast color. And all my yarns are sticking everywhere. It's because I refuse to weave in more ends than I have to. So for the heel flap, I knit it with my blue yarn still attached, which is a very, honestly, I'm just losing out at this point. Okay, so we have our flap, we've got our turn. We finish our turn with a right side row in which we're just gonna knit across. We're not gonna do any more of the closing the gap. Okay, so then we've knit across. I've got my yarn coming out the back here. And what we did when we were making this heel flap is create essentially an exposed edge with slip stitches along here.
Yeah. There's a needle here.
There is a needle there. Ah, no, the needle I wanted is here. So many needles. Caitlin is counting her blessings that she does magic loop by the second. Okay, let me use this lovely little hook I've got here to demonstrate. So we've got some slip stitches under here. So you can see there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. You should have, so if you did 15 rows, you should have 15, or sorry, nope. If you did, if you remember from last week, we did our heel flap across half our stitches. So in this case, it was across 30. And then you would do 15, you want 15 slip stitches, and that's your sign to start turning your heel. Or in other words, if you've got 30 stitches across for your heel flap, you want a total of 30 rows. And that will leave you with the 15 along here.
Right, so you're gonna slip stitch for every 2 rows.
Exactly. You start each row with a slip stitch, so you will have 15 slipped on either side, although I'm pretty sure I have 16 on mine. Whatever. It's fine. They match. That's why I do them 2 at a time. Okay, so we have all our slip stitches here, and what we're going to do is we finished our row here. We're going to pick up stitches all the way along here. We're going to knit over the top of the foot and then pick up stitches again down the side here. And that's how we end up with stitches on everything, at which point we can progress to the decreases. So there are many different ways to pick up stitches. I think I've demonstrated before with a hook. I can also demonstrate with a needle. Once again, I chose terrible needle colors for the demonstration. These are things I think of on camera. All right, so to pick up a stitch, I'm going to look at, can you see down the barrel of the needle here? Sort of, maybe? Okay, I've got a live stitch here.
Okay.
And that live stitch is coming out of this slip stitch, so I'm gonna go to the next one down.
Okay. Okay, gotcha.
And go in with my hook, because I don't want 2 stitches coming out of the same one. So I'm gonna go into the next stitch with my hook, wrap the yarn, and use the hook to catch that wrap and pull back through. And that's picked up and knit 1 stitch. I'm gonna do a couple. So that was the first one. The next one is here. And I'm gonna wrap and pick up.
So are you picking up both legs of the stitch?
I am picking up both legs of the
Okay.
stitch. It honestly doesn't matter so long as you're consistent, but I prefer the security of both legs for something that's gonna get rubbed against my foot.
Yeah, and then
and my
that way
shoe.
it's not gonna leave big holes.
Exactly. And I'm gonna keep going like that. And once I've got a couple of them on, I'm gonna slide them over and onto my needle here. So, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so you can continue to pick up in that method if you would like to keep going with your hook. Go into the next one, but I actually prefer at this point to use my needle, and that's because I've done this a lot, and so I've got the practice down. But I would just go under both legs of the slip, wrap my yarn, and just sort of pop back out again. It's basically the same motion as with the hook, but faster. Ooh. And a little less fussy if you're practiced at it. If you're not, arguably it could be a little more fussy.
And the nice thing about picking up stitches this way, picking up and knitting stitches this way, is if you screw it up, you can pull it back without having any live stitches going loose.
That's a great point, because my last live stitch is here, and if I ripped all of this back, it would still get caught by this needle, no problem.
Yeah.
So you can redo this as many times as you need to. And then actually when you said this pick up and knit point, so what we're doing is technically picking up and knitting, but it is what I do anytime something calls for you to pick up. Because I think traditionally some people think about picking up as just popping this on the needle and then this on the needle and then this on the needle. It gets very awkward very quickly. There's not as much flexibility because you're fighting against the fabric and the rigidness of your knitting needle. So by just taking that extra step of going in, wrapping and coming back out, all of a sudden you have way more flexibility to get into the next stitch. Alrighty. So I'm just gonna keep going all the way along here. And then because I did a contrast heel, it's pretty obvious to me what my last slip stitch is, because my last slip stitch was the bright blue yarn. And I'm just going to quickly count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Yes, I did do 16 by accident, whatever. So I've got 16 stitches, and then I usually like to pick up at least one extra in this gap. You don't have to, you can do this and you will get a little bit of a hole. If you pick up an extra stitch, you might still get a little bit of a hole, and that's fine. You can use your leftover yarn to sew that shut afterwards, but you're less likely to get a little hole if you pick up an extra stitch in the middle. It's very similar to Caitlin when you were showing us how to pick up stitches for the sweaters.
Yeah, for the armpit.
Exactly. So I'm going to pick, I'm actually not going to pick the next one down. So I did this light blue. I'm not going to pick that. I'm going to pick the one below that. I feel like it's going to get me a slightly better result. And that's just a gut instinct kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So there we go. I now have 17 stitches picked up along that side. The real question is, did I do 17 or 18 on this side? Hold on. 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 14, 16, 17. Perfect. Okay, 17. So I matched my other sock, which is great. And then you would knit across, and then I like to count backwards. So count my 16 or 15 down here, and then make sure to pick up my extra stitch down here at the beginning.
Right.
And then go across and pick up into your slips. And so once you've done that, you will have something that looks like this. It's very exciting, but oh my God, there's lots of stitches. I feel kind of like that lady, or anybody who has a cooking show where it's like, well, and then like if you have 30 minutes later, well, I've taken my cake out of the oven 30 minutes later.
The magic of television.
Exactly. So you should have lots and lots of stitches. You will have on both sides your 17, 16, 18, whatever. Just make sure they match. And if you're not doing them 2 at a time, make a little note of how many you picked up, because you'll regret not doing it later. You will have your regular stitches along the bottom, from the bottom of your heel turn. And then I have taken the stitches from both of these needles. I use these 2 at the top just so that it was a little bit easier to knit this heel flap back and forth. But I've now slid them all over onto one needle here. And so I picked up, knit across, picked up, and then I knit across the bottom of the foot again. And now I'm ready to do a decrease row. Oh, so exciting. So 2 things. In addition to doing a decrease, I'm also going to recommend that the first time that you knit these picked up stitches on either side, that you knit them through the back loop. It's going to twist them a little bit, make them just a little bit more secure, keep any gaps from appearing, makes it look a little bit tighter right along here. And so normally we wouldn't want it to be super tight, except this is a perfect opportunity for it to be super tight. And it'll just kind of fly under the radar in terms of texture.
Yeah, I'm just looking closer at it.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, so I'm just going to quickly knit until I have 3 here, 3 at the end of this needle. And I'm going to knit these through the back loop. 1. Oh, Lord. Okay, I'm not going to count like I'm an aerobics instructor. And I'm also not going to demo what knitting through the back loop looks like, because we'll be here forever. I'm just going to knit these guys.
What yarn is that?
This, the one that I'm knitting?
Yeah.
It is, no, the other one, Emily. It's, Biscotti.
Pearl?
No, it's Biscotti and C. Biscotti and C. Deep Stash Dive.
Mm-hmm.
It's very lovely. I think I bought it like 5 or 6 years ago. Actually, no, that's a lie. I'm sure it's like 8 years ago. Very deep stash dive. All right, almost there. I've got 1 more. Okay, so now I've got 3 left. Oh, I had 3 left. Let me get them back on the needle real quickly. Okay, there we are. All right, so for the last 3, on this side, you're going to knit 2 together and then knit 1. I'm going to twist them right now so that they, I don't think that actually, no, that's just a knit 2 together. Whatever. I'm going to knit 2 together, and then knit the last one. There we go. And so that is a decrease on this side. So the first side will always be knit 2 together. And then on the other side, instead of doing a knit together, we'll do a knit 1 and then slip, slip, knit. Do we need a demo? I can power knit.
Sure.
All right.
I can chat while you do.
Yeah, chit chat.
Yeah.
Tell me about your ridiculous stash habits so that I don't feel guilty.
Oh gosh, my stash habits. I actually just did a big deep clean in my craft room. It's
Ooh.
lovely. Well, you know, there's still some problem spots, but it's looking good. But yeah, what was I going to say? I haven't been working on the 2 at a time socks that I started last week.
Yeah.
I'd like to get started on them because I love that yarn. It's so pretty.
I also did a bit of ostensibly I should be calling it an office, but it's really a yarn room. A tidy of my yarn room. However, I did get waylaid, and all of a sudden my like brain break at work is to sort buttons by color and size.
Oh my
and then
gosh.
sew them together. It's kind of ridiculous. I look like I feel like I'm like that fish in the tank in Finding Nemo, where
Yes.
he's like obsessed with the bubbles.
Yes.
Like, ooh, bubbles. And I'm like, ooh, bubbles.
It's very relaxing to
It
sort
is.
buttons.
It's
I have
very
to
good
say.
when I'm like, okay, I need to like walk away from my keyboard for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
No, that's way too many minutes. That's a Freudian slip. I meant 3 minutes. And I need to sort buttons. God help me if I spend 30 minutes in a row sorting
Oh my
buttons.
God.
Okay. So I've knit across the top here.
Okay.
And now I'm going to knit 1
Mm-hmm.
to start. You want to knit one. You want a plain stitch basically at this join, so that your join isn't right up against the next needle. It works a little bit better in terms of stretching your stitches and so forth. Okay, so I've knit 1, and then I'm going to slip, slip, knit. So that would be go in as if to knit and slip over, go in as if to knit and slip over, and then you're going to pop your needle back in from the left, wrap your yarn, and come back out like you were knitting through the back loop. And then you're just gonna keep on knitting. All right, and so oh wait, no, hold on. You are also going to do this side, just this first row. You're gonna do this side, knit through the back loop again to tighten it
Okay.
up. Yeah. And then on the next row, you can just knit regularly. You don't have to keep remembering to do that. And so
Oh,
forth
right,
and so
okay.
on.
Gotcha.
Yes. Okay, so we would finish. And so that was a decrease row. So we're going to alternate. So we did a decrease, then we're going to do just a plain row where we knit across all the stitches, then another decrease, then another plain, and so forth, alternating between the two until you get back to the same number of stitches that you had when you cast on. So I cast on 60, so I'm going to keep going until I have 60 again. And because half of my stitches from before were on here, 30, I know that I need this total to equal 30 as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for me, I would probably put a stitch marker on the corners where you're going to be doing your
Yes.
decreases, because then I could relax and do the knitting.
Oh, Caitlin, it's funny. I was like, oh, if I put the stitch markers on, I'm gonna like confuse myself, and I'm gonna like drop them, and then I'll be scrambling and be like, oh my god, I look like an idiot on camera, more so than usual. But you are 100% right. Stitch markers, super handy, and I like these like little ones here. There's blue and red, so because I'm using blue yarn, I would use the red, and I would put them right before this one single stitch, and then right after this one single stitch, and I would know that on this side is where I have to do my decreases.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you can spot what a decrease looks like if you stop paying attention. So this is what a slip slip knit looks like. You've got one stitch stacked on top of another, and then the knit two together looks like the same kind of thing but in the opposite direction. So I've got one stitch stacked leaning on another, and so if you see this right below your needle and your needle's like that, you know you just did a knit two together, so now you got to do a plain row. But if your needle shows up just a plain stitch above the two slanted, that's when you know you got to do a decrease.
Cool.
Reading your knitting is awesome.
Yeah, and I love using stitch markers
Oh,
so
God,
that I
yes.
just can shut off.
Yes.
I can just knit until I get there.
Yes. And so Caitlin actually had a really interesting question about how many needles I like to use when I'm knitting socks.
Mm-hmm.
So you will see that I have transferred from like 1, 2, 3 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I had 3 plus 1 and now I've got 4 plus 1. This is my active needle, which you can totally do. So traditionally, I think it's Europeans that tend to use 4 needles plus a working one, and then the sort of more American style is to use 3 needles plus a working one. And sometimes in this particular section, because there are so many stitches and I don't like things being hard for me, I will sometimes move half of these stitches on to like an extra needle. So I'll have 5 plus 1 for a little while, or I'll just be wild and crazy. So you can move your stitches around all you want. Just make sure that you know, marked with stitch markers or something, where your decreases are supposed to be, where the top of your sock is supposed to be, where the bottom of your sock is supposed to be, because we're about to enter tube station. So once you've finished all your decreases, you're down to however many stitches you started with. So once I've hit 60, then all you gotta do is just keep knitting a tube. Boom, 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 with no increases, no decreases, no thinking, if you can help it.
Yeah.
Be really good.
I love this part.
Me too. Zoom, 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 zoom. And then you're going to stop when your sock hits the base of your big toe. So I have learned that it's probably not wise for me to put my naked feet on the internet. So what I'm going to do, sorry folks, I'm going to pretend that my hand is a foot, and I'm going to pretend that this is my big toe here. So I would keep going until you hit right at the base toe. If you are in doubt, knit a couple extra rows. It's not going to be the end of the world if you're a few rows longer on your toe. If you go a few rows shorter, then you will be like me and habitually wear through your toes. I always wear through the big toes first. Yeah, and then next week we will talk about toes.
Cool.
So exciting. I did an anatomical toe for this one, so I guess I'm gonna have to talk about it next week.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's move this back up. How's that?
It's good. Yeah. It's good enough.
It
It's
wants,
like a little angly, but
yeah, it wants to kind of
yeah.
turn that way.
Yeah. And it's also a little bit. Okay, no.
Oh my god. Oh my god. There.
No help. This is great. I can
why.
stop doing the TikTok trend where people like tilt their camera and then run off screen. Okay. So those are toes. Nope, those aren't toes. That was the gusset of the sock.
Yes.
Again, when we were talking last week about heels, I find that this has a tendency to really fit my foot better than the short row heel. But I encourage you to, I don't know, it's just something away. It's just got like a little extra grip.
Yeah.
But I would encourage you to try all of the heels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See what you enjoy knitting.
That's
See
important.
what fits well.
Yep.
Because there's so many different things you can do.
Yes.
For sure.
And everybody's feet are different.
Yes.
Everybody, like, really,
Yeah.
try them all.
Yeah. And, wear them out and about in different
Yeah.
shoes. See what stays on your feet best.
Yeah.
I have certain socks that I know they don't stay on very well.
Yeah.
A certain pair that don't fit in my boots very well, but if it's really cold, I'll wear them
Yeah.
in the house.
I have like wash day socks.
Yep.
where I'm like, oh, well, I gotta wait like 4 days for my like 80 socks to dry. So I guess I'm wearing these ones.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We'll have a party when you knit your 100th pair.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We should.
We should.
I would come.
Okay. That's it. We'll convince Katie.
Yeah. So the other thing Katie reminded me, she wants me to mention that we have quite a few needle sets in the shop. I think we just got a restock of some Chaogu stuff. I think there's a DPN set. It's the Patina Bamboo Sock Set DPNs. So it's got a few sizes in here. I think it's 5 sets of 6-inch. Yeah, 5 sets of 6-inch needles, and they go up to they go from 2.25 millimeters to 3.25 millimeters. So those would be good for socks, DK weight socks, mittens, hats. Decreases, like lots of different things. Sleeves.
Oh, you know what? You know what else they're good for? You know those little tiny frogs that took over Instagram?
Yes. I love it.
Yeah, tiny gauge.
Love it.
Yes.
And we do have quite a few other, like the Luca sets. That I think they've got a...
I think there's some shorties as well.
Yeah, there's a shorty set.
Yeah, I think Katie was just doing a My Kingdom for shorties. Cry earlier this afternoon.
So if you think sock knitting is something you'd like to kind of delve more into and you want to kind of invest in something for your arsenal, these kits are awesome, and they usually come with a few extra little things like stitch markers and gauges and things like that.
And I am a staunch supporter of knitting heavier weight socks for your loved ones. Because I got to knit for me too. Yeah. So I'm a big sport and DK weight sock person for my family. And then I get these lovely fingering weight socks. Okay, I feel like that was all we were going to talk about today.
Yeah, and I didn't see any comments yet. So we will leave it for today. And just let us know how you're doing with your sock knitting.
Yep.
Whether you're doing toe up, top down, what point you're at.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about it.
As always, questions can go in the comments. We look at them in between. If you're watching this in the far, far future, I mean, so long as it's not like 30 years from now, feel free to put a question in the comments. I cannot guarantee if it is 2054 that we will get back to you. But up until that point, 29 years and under, we can... Oh God. We can answer your questions or reach out via social media or email.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. We'll see you next week.
Yes, for toes and cuffs.